Hi, welcome to the NIRI 2018 annual conference. I'm joined by Lee Ahlstrom, this year's NIRI board chair. How are you doing, Lee?
I'm doing great. It's a very exciting time to be here in Las Vegas, at the beautiful Wynn Resort. If you're watching this at home, you should be here.
Absolutely. Well, so how are you finding your year as board chair, and kind of what are your priorities this year?
So, Gary is now really officially into year two of his tenure as NIRI CEO and president. And having him on board has been a breath of fresh air, I think, not just for the organization and for its priorities, but also for what we as a board now have the ability to focus on. And so, this year we've already taken up a task force on long-termism and guidance. We had a speaker from Focusing Capital in the Long Term, that advocacy group, come and speak to us at our March board meeting. We immediately convened a task force of the board to update our policy on guidance, and we are issuing that, I think, today. So that will go out, which is perfect timing in line with Mr. Buffett's letter and the Business Roundtable. We, on Saturday, were able to approve a new long-term strategic plan for the organization, which is really focused on bringing more participants in the investor relations ecosystem into the NIRI fold. So, yes, there are a lot of investor relations officers out there, but, CFOs and treasurers and CEOs, they should all be part of NIRI and learning about what it is that we have at these conferences and the excellent content. So, we're trying to look out across the terrain and see where IR is heading, and then ensure that NIRI is well positioned, because change is constant, and we're in the midst of some very large sea changes with social media and the dynamics on the exchanges. So all of these are things that we're trying as a board to make sure that NIRI puts itself in a position to address as we move ahead.
Sure, and I'll be having a conversation later today with Gary and Ron about the regulatory side of things, including the focus on long-termism, which, as you say, is very topical. I was interested to hear this morning as well that NIRI are trialing a conference east this year as a sort of model for branching out a little bit. What's the story behind that?
Well, so, we do a number of different training seminars, both on the East Coast and West Coast. But we don't always take advantage of our presence in a market to bring more practitioners to the table. So we attract people who are new to IR, for example, for the IR Fundamentals course, and that will be part of NIRI East. But now it's an opportunity to actually get, again, that ecosystem involved and engaged in more things NIRI, so that when even our own members think about, okay, who are the right people to go to on this issue? Well, it's NIRI first, and then we can act as the conduit to the expertise either within the organization itself or within the supplier community. So we're going to do NIRI East this year. We'll expand that to NIRI West and Midwest in 2019.
Great, fantastic. And I know you mentioned about kind of NIRI being more inclusive, perhaps, or more all-encompassing, perhaps. And it's interesting also to hear about the plans to expand the Next Gen program that has been trialed in New York. Obviously, Deb Wasser has been recognized for her contribution in that respect. What role do you think NIRI has to play in kind of mentoring that next generation of IR talent?
So I remember when I got into IR 15 or so years ago, and at that time I couldn't even spell IR, so I knew absolutely nothing about what I could say, what I should say, what anybody was going to ask me to say. So I think for people who come into the profession, and I really, we've seen a lot of buy side and sell side want to come into the profession as well, as the sell side model, and the street model is changing and evolving too. NIRI is a must be first step. It's a must. You've got to understand, as somebody new, not just the dynamics of the regulatory environment, but the dynamics of the political environment in your company, and how to manage that. How to go and use the access that you get as an IR professional to almost anything within your company that you want to learn about. You can always say, oh, you know what, I just had 2 investor questions about that issue. Hey, can I take 15 minutes of your time and let you educate me? there's no better job within a company other than CEO or CFO to understand your company, your business, the political impacts on your industry, and that's why IR should be at the nexus of every public company's business.
It's an interesting time for IR. It feels like it's a real kind of inflection point where the profession really can kick on and provide that kind of strategic value.
It is, and you look at what's happening with MiFID II and what that's going to mean to coverage for companies, and is there going to be paid research, and how are you going to decide who you pay for your research? The changes in the markets. I mean, we are so fortunate this year at the conference to have both Adina Friedman and Stacey Cunningham, the two first female heads of our national exchanges, here at the conference giving keynote addresses. So that's huge, and what we're seeing is the ability for, or the rise of women. Is this the decade of the woman in business coming to the forefront here? So it's very exciting when we think about all the changes, and NIRI's job is to be at the forefront of all of these.
Fantastic. Well, final question. You mentioned that we're here in Las Vegas. So any tips on how I can win a small fortune on the blackjack table?
So it was funny. I texted my daughter the other day and I said, "Hey, honey, I'm thinking about taking the retirement account, and I'm just going to go bet it all on black." And she wrote back, "No, Dad, don't do that." And I said, "Oh, you're going to be fine. You're going to get your nursing degree. You'll be able to support us. But I'm not done yet, please." So I would say, the rule of thumb for taking it's usually about starting with a large fortune and ending with a small fortune, right? So I'm not a big gambler, and I would recommend avoiding that.
That sounds very sensible. Well, I believe there are enough parties and social events around the conference to not need to visit the tables. Yeah.
Exactly right.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining us, Lee. I'm sure you're very busy, so we'll let you get off, but thanks so much.
Thank you very much.